Literally witnessed two things. We witnessed Caitlin Clark once again cementing herself as the demon of the WNBA. Flashes of 2024 and Iowa last night, while literally trying to pull the entire team along on her back because of an awful head coach named Stephanie White.
There comes a moment in every major sports franchise when the pressure becomes too much to hide. A moment when excuses collapse, the loyal fan base completely loses patience, and the entire organization is forced to stare directly into the disaster created. For the Indiana Fever, that moment did not arrive when the final buzzer sounded after another crushing home loss. It happened on the sidelines. It happened inside the post-game press conference. It happened the instant the basketball world saw undeniable proof, a toxic double standard ripping this franchise apart from the inside out. Welcome back to WNBA Swish. Today, we are breaking down the absolute chaos surrounding the Indiana Fever organization, a situation that has now exploded far beyond bad coaching decisions or frustrating losses. Fans are no longer simply upset. They are furious. They are calling for boycotts. They are demanding sweeping changes from the coaching staff all the way to the top of Pacers sports and entertainment ownership. And when you examine the growing evidence surrounding head coach Stephanie White and the treatment of Caitlin Clark, it becomes crystal clear why the fan base believes this franchise is heading toward a complete meltdown. Because what many Fever supporters are seeing now goes far deeper than missed rotations, failed defensive schemes, or late-game collapses. In their eyes, this has become something far more damaging, a visible pattern of disrespect, criticism, and marginalization aimed directly at the most important and culturally impactful player the league has ever seen.
Some reason. Now, essentially the same question about Kelsey Mitchell.
Sorry, I guess with Kelsey Mitchell and what she did to them, it was something else.
I'm speechless, really. She was 0 for 7 in the first half and 4 points, and just put us on her back. Made big shot after big shot, big play after big play. She didn't settle. She stayed aggressive.
Let's start with the post-game press conference, because this is the moment many Fever fans are calling the true breaking point, the moment that, in their minds, exposed everything happening behind the scenes. Caitlin Clark had just delivered one of the most explosive fourth-quarter performances of the season. Down the stretch, she caught fire from deep, drilled 5 three-pointers in the final quarter alone, and completely transformed the energy of the game. In just minutes, she dragged a struggling Indiana offense back to life and forced overtime through pure shot-making brilliance and relentless competitive energy. Naturally, reporters asked head coach Stephanie White about Clark's incredible late-game takeover. In most situations, fans expect that question to become a moment of celebration for the superstar player, praise for the leadership, the shot-making, and the ability to carry a team under pressure. But the response immediately sparked backlash online. Instead of focusing directly on Clark's individual performance, White emphasized the resilience of the entire group, saying the team collectively showed toughness and the ability to make big plays. And that single answer instantly ignited outrage across social media. Many Fever supporters felt the moment called for direct recognition of Clark's performance specifically. To them, it sounded like the head coach intentionally shifted attention away from the player who had just dominated the fourth quarter. Fans interpreted it as another example of Clark's biggest moments being minimized instead of fully celebrated. Whether that interpretation is fair or not, the reaction was massive, because in the eyes of frustrated fans, this was not just about one press conference quote anymore. It was about a growing perception that Clark is being held to a completely different standard than everyone else on the roster. And the controversy only intensified moments later, when another reporter asked White about Kelsey Mitchell and her performance.
Something else.
I'm speechless, really. She was 0 for 7 in the first half and 4 points, and just put us on her back. Made big shot after big shot, big play after big play. She didn't settle. She stayed aggressive, and she willed us.
Sorry, I guess.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The difference.
Now here's where the controversy truly exploded among Fever fans. Earlier in the game, Kelsey Mitchell struggled badly out of the gate, starting 0-for-7 from the field in the first half with only a handful of points. But when reporters later asked head coach Stephanie White about Mitchell's performance, fans immediately noticed a dramatic shift in tone and emotion. Suddenly, the cautious team-focused language disappeared. White became passionate, animated, and overflowed with praise, saying she was speechless and describing how Mitchell put us on her back, made huge plays, stayed aggressive, and willed the team forward. That contrast is what sent social media into absolute chaos. Supporters of Caitlin Clark compared the two answers side by side and saw what they believed was a glaring double standard. In their eyes, Clark delivered a historic fourth-quarter takeover that dragged the Fever back into the game almost single-handedly. Yet her performance was framed as collective group resilience. Meanwhile, Mitchell's comeback performance received emotional individual praise and language about leadership, toughness, and carrying the team. To frustrated fans and analysts, the optics were disastrous. They viewed it as evidence of favoritism and internal politics that are beginning to fracture the public perception of the franchise. Fair or unfair, many supporters now believe Clark is being treated differently despite being the face of the organization and one of the biggest stars the league has ever produced. And according to those fans, the press conference was only part of the story. They argue the real evidence appears during games themselves, in the sideline reactions, coaching interactions, and visible body language that cameras continue to capture. Because when emotions run high in professional sports, fans believe body language often reveals far more than carefully prepared press conference answers ever could.
Let's move on though, chat. CC takeover in full effect when the whole world was counting on her, and she delivered. Look at this right here. Oh my gosh, she 22. Game time shot. And it's Stephanie White celebrating, and Stephanie White screaming, clapping her hands. No. And you're going to be like, Venom, don't worry. Stephanie White is locked in. All right, well, let's see when Kelsey Mitchell scores then. But anyways, there was nothing or nobody that could stop Caitlin Clark. So see, off ball with no...
Okay. What he's saying is Stephanie White act like nothing happened at all.
According to fans dissecting every moment of the game online, the controversy intensified even further after side-by-side reaction clips began circulating across social media, many of them highlighted by creators like Venom Reacts. Supporters pointed to one particular sequence late in regulation when the pressure was overwhelming and Caitlin Clark delivered a massive game-tying three-pointer to force overtime. It was a type of shot that instantly electrified the arena and sent basketball fans across the internet into a frenzy. But what caught everyone's attention was a reaction from head coach Stephanie White on the sideline. As the crowd erupted around her, fans noticed White appeared calm, expressionless, and emotionally restrained. There was no visible celebration, no dramatic reaction, and no outward display of excitement after one of the biggest shots of the game. Supporters defending White argued that some coaches simply stay locked into moment, immediately focusing on strategy and the next possession instead of celebrating emotionally during high-pressure situations. But critics were not convinced. They claimed the reaction looked noticeably disconnected given the magnitude of Clark's shot and the emotional energy inside the building. And that is exactly why the debate exploded online. Because critics then pointed to other sideline moments from the same game, arguing that White showed far more visible emotion and enthusiasm in response to plays involving other players. To those fans, the contrast became the centerpiece of a growing narrative about unequal treatment and tense internal dynamics surrounding the Fever organization.
3. Now, Kelsey Mitchell.
Screens again as Kelsey dribble Mitchell with a nasty ankle breaker, I cannot lie. As Stephanie White applauds and screams in excitement. So Caitlin Clark hitting a game-tying shot to send it to overtime didn't warrant that response for Stephanie White. But Kelsey Mitchell, and the move was nice right here. Foster, oh my gosh. Look at Stephanie White. Oh my God, look at the emotion from this coach right here. Holy, she's like, yeah, Kelsey, she almost had...
The online backlash intensified after another sideline clip began spreading across social media. This time, Kelsey Mitchell made a strong individual play, creating space with a crossover before knocking down a jumper. It was a solid offensive moment, but fans immediately focused on a reaction from head coach Stephanie White. Unlike her calm demeanor after Caitlin Clark's dramatic game-tying shot, White appeared visibly emotional on the sideline, clapping aggressively, shouting, and celebrating with intense energy. That contrast became fuel for an already raging debate among Fever supporters. Critics argue the difference in reactions was impossible to ignore and claimed it reflected a deeper preference within the organization. Fair or not, many fans now believe White is more emotionally invested in building around Mitchell and the veteran core, while Clark, despite being the league's biggest star and the centerpiece of the franchise's future, is sometimes treated more cautiously or critically. The frustration has now expanded beyond coaching decisions and into broader conversations about the entire Fever organization. Some fans have even accused the team's social media strategy of downplaying Clark's presence despite her massive popularity and influence on the league's visibility. Supporters point out that Clark is one of the most recognizable figures in women's basketball, capable of generating enormous engagement and national attention with almost anything she does. Because of that, critics found it strange when the team's official account spent stretches promoting other players and lighter content, while Clark-related posts appeared less frequent. To those frustrated supporters, it feels like the organization is attempting to balance veteran recognition with Clark's overwhelming spotlight. But in doing so, they believe the Fever are mishandling the biggest marketing opportunity in franchise history. Critics argue that instead of fully embracing Clark as the undeniable face of the organization, the team appears hesitant to center everything around her rise. At the same time, fans are also questioning the actual on-court results under White's leadership. One of the major reasons the Fever hired her was her reputation for building disciplined, physical defensive teams. Yet in this same game, the defense struggled badly against the Washington Mystics. Sonia Citron erupted for a career-high scoring performance, while Kiki Iriafen dominated inside with another huge night offensively. For angry fans, that combination, emotional controversy, questionable public messaging, and continued defensive breakdowns, has created the feeling that the Fever are drifting further away from stability instead of building toward championship contention.
Kiki Iriafen, Citron, 30 points, career high. Kiki Iriafen, 25 points, career high. 10 of 14, 11 of 17. Congratulations, Stephanie White, the defensive guru to end all defensive gurus in the WNBA. You had two players go for career highs against you. Wow. Wow. And guys, we're going to get to Stephanie White and her statement from the press conference last night. Some statements she made about
the frustration surrounding Stephanie White reached another level after the Fever once again struggled defensively in a high-scoring overtime loss. Critics pointed to the alarming defensive numbers, repeated breakdowns in paint, poor rotations, and multiple opposing players posting career-best performances as evidence that the team is failing to improve in the very area White was hired to fix. Fans expected a tougher, more disciplined defensive identity under her leadership, but instead, many believe the system looks disorganized and overly dependent on Caitlin Clark rescuing the offense late in games. That growing frustration has caused some Fever supporters to re-examine the previous coaching era under Christie sides. While many fans criticized sides last season, some are now arguing that at least the offense eventually became fully centered around Clark's strengths and playmaking ability. In contrast, critics claim White is attempting to force a more balanced system that, in their view, minimizes the impact of the team's biggest superstar instead of maximizing it. The loudest complaints came after the game's final possession. Following Clark's explosive scoring stretch against the Washington Mystics, fans expected the last shot to go through her hands. Instead, the final play was designed for Kelsey Mitchell. That decision immediately became one of the most debated moments online, with critics arguing that you simply cannot take the ball away from a player who had just caught fire in crunch time. Supporters of White countered that Mitchell is also an elite scorer, and that coaches often trust multiple veterans in late-game situations. But for frustrated fans, the choice reinforced the perception that White consistently favors Mitchell over Clark in key moments. The backlash has now evolved beyond basketball strategy and into a much larger conversation about leadership, franchise direction, and business priorities. Many fans believe the Fever should fully embrace Clark as the unquestioned centerpiece of the organization, not only because of her on-court talent, but because of the unprecedented attention, ratings, and financial growth she brings to the league. Critics argue that any system failing to maximize or impact is ultimately failing the franchise itself. As the debate grows louder, some supporters are calling on ownership to step in before the season spirals further out of control. Others believe the criticism has become exaggerated and emotionally driven after a small sample of games. But there is no denying that the pressure surrounding White, Clark, and the Fever organization has intensified dramatically. Every coaching decision, every press conference answer, and every sideline reaction is now being analyzed under a microscope by one of the most passionate and engaged fan bases in professional basketball.